Welcome to the meeting room at Global TV Talk Show, a broadcast service of globalbusinessnews.net.
This episode from the meeting room of Global TV Talk Show is brought to you by
The Bridge School, the accredited international online private school of choice, at bridgek12.org.
Porch Light Rental and Destination Services. Reduce your renter lump sum or managed relocation costs. Visit them at porchlightrental.com.
CubeMonk, featuring the world's first smart cube. Track your goods with our advanced GPS system. Welcome to the future of moving and relocation at cubemonk.com.
Primestone Partners, featuring corporate, government, and developer housing solutions, as well as senior-level advisory services. Find them at primestonepartners.com.
And by heirs.com. With our full range of services, we can help design and manage your international relocation. Find us at heirs.com.
Insured Nomads provides protection and peace of mind, with health insurance, travel insurance, group, or tailored insurance for the globally mobile. Visit us at insurednomads.com.
And by International Auto Source. We are the vehicle experts for expats, featuring all major brands of automobiles with flexible solutions and financing. On the web at intlauto.com.
This is Ed Cohen in San Diego, California. Today is 5 March, and can't wait for spring and daylight savings time. And this is Global TV Talk Show, a news product of globalbusinessnews.net. Our very special guest today is an old friend and a businessman in Connecticut. Michael Cadden is founder of Living Abroad. Livingabroad.com has been an invaluable resource for some of the nation's largest organizations, even worldwide, for serving and satisfying the needs of their international transferees. Michael Cadden is Managing Director, International Operations. Let's say hi to Michael. Hi.
Hello, Ed. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, it's really a pleasure. So as we were talking in the green room a little earlier, we've been doing videos for about a year now. And prior to that, we've done hundreds of live meetings. And someday we'll do it again. But certainly keep this going into a hybrid kind of a system, because I happen to love it and the cost is great. So,
right, and you're uniquely qualified to do it. So that's
how kind of you. That's very nice. So Living Abroad, I want you to do a deep dive for 30 seconds. What is living abroad?
Living abroad, I think when I was talking to my business partner yesterday, said it brings peace of mind to assignees and HR, that they have the information they need to cross borders to do business, and they're going to find schools, and they're going to find friends, and they're going to, think everything's going to work out fine, and they can, and that's what we really sell. It's, a lot of data on a lot of countries, but we try to couch it in a way that helps them feel comfortable in where they're going and the different kinds of people they're going to be doing business with.
So essentially, you have a database of information about a whole bunch of destinations and organizations, and it goes real deep.
It goes real deep,
and you sell a subscription to that kind of.
Correct. We have a subscription model, and as you said, we work with the biggest companies of the world, and even in this pandemic, people are using us a lot.
Yeah, they're still.
We don't even know why, because they're not relocating that much, but they're global work teams. There's a lot of people doing business, internationally, even if they're not traveling these days. But that's about to change, anyways.
Right. I'm looking forward to basically what's going to be an explosion in May, maybe June, but certainly coming. You can see it, the pent up demand and itching to go, itching to do stuff. So we have a number of broadcasts coming up in March and April that will address how ready are companies to handle an onslaught of business. They've got to go through spring training like now in order to get the rust out, right? And, because wouldn't you agree that the needs of your best customers have changed as a result of the pandemic?
Oh, absolutely.
So are companies prepared to understand that?
Right. They're going to have to look at, and that will come up in our ROI discussion, I think, later, but they're going to have to look at each assignment very, very closely now, because they've got to decide whether they're going to send somebody or do them virtually, or, things we've learned over the last 12 months.
Okay, so if you remember for a moment, if we can just go back to last century, century to 1999, when in November of 1999, when I was fortunate enough to produce a live meeting in Paris, and we had a rock and roll band, and
I was
we
there.
had somebody bringing in the Nouveau Beaujolais, and then we got somebody else to sponsor the cheese. And I don't remember anything that went on other than that party, but that was a good one.
I've seen pictures of myself there. That's how I know I was there.
I know. So did you have hair then? I don't remember.
A little. It was
a little wisp.
Years ago, little wisps.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So, what kinds of information typically do large companies, say an integrated energy company, okay, just as an example, no name names, we don't need that, but what kinds of info would they subscribe to from you?
They would want to know when one of our clients is moving thousands of people to Afghanistan this month. Okay, so people are moving. They contacted us to get an Afghan video together so that they could introduce the country, what it's like to live there. We know what you read in the news, and that's not going to be true for where they're going to live and how they're going to live. Yeah, they got to be safe, but they've got to also take advantage of the country and the parts of the country that will make it a nice experience for them, and the people. So we try to introduce them to those things. We're realistic, but we don't do anything to dissuade anybody from going. Just tell them the truth about what's out there on the ground, on living, working, doing business, and the people that they're going to be dealing with.
Let me ask you a question. Where in the world, in other words, pinpointed on a map, where is Afghanistan? It's, you think of it in on the moon or something, but but it's actually in between Iran
China,
and India,
Pakistan, Tajikistan, China, right up in there. So again, it's important for us to have accurate information. And
good, thank you.
That's what people buy. It's trusted. It's like why you subscribe to the New York Times or Washington, the Wall Street Journal, to get your news rather than just Googling it because you're not sure where it's coming from, and so.
Right. Good. So I want to show a brief video about how, just as an example of the kinds of good stuff you provide to companies. So let's show this brief video and we'll have a brief discussion. And then I want to deep dive with you into how do companies measure ROI? If you can't measure it, you can't manage it, right? So I understand Living Abroad has figured out how to understand it and also now teach it. How is this possible?
Soccer and samba, Rio and rainforest, carnival and candomblé, colonial cities and modern skyscrapers. Brazil offers a rich diversity of peoples, places, and experiences. One hears the influences of Africa in Brazil's music, tastes the different cultures in its food, and experiences a wide variety of religious festivals throughout the year. The preeminent festival in Brazil is Carnaval, which is celebrated in most cities but is closely identified with the world-famous celebration in Rio. This pre-Lenten Carnival is an extraordinary festival of song, dance, costume, food, drink, parades, parties, and balls. Brazil's national day is Independence Day, or Dia da Independência. Celebrated on September 7, it marks the date Brazil declared its independence. The seasons are the reverse of those in the Northern Hemisphere. Winters are generally mild in both Rio and São Paulo. Foreigners will find Brazilians friendly and welcoming. The surest way to establish communication is to show an appreciation for Brazil and its culture, and to try to speak Portuguese. Brazilians appreciate such gestures. Expect people to stand very close when talking, except during a pandemic. Try not to back away, which could be taken as a sign of aloofness. Brazilians also touch frequently while conversing. It's a sign of friendship. Eye contact conveys sincerity and is essential when speaking to a Brazilian. Safe topics of conversation include sports, especially football, and general subjects about Brazil, the country's rapid growth, beautiful beaches, and other similar topics. You may wish to avoid discussing politics, personal matters, or topics about Argentina, Brazil's neighbor and rival. It is suggested that expatriates live as close to school and work as possible. Cities tend to have heavy traffic, especially in the late afternoon. Returning home may take an hour or longer. To learn more about Brazil, choose your topics from the table of contents on the left. We wish you much success in your new adventure.
Hola.
Yes, well, I did that in your honor because we've been to Brazil together, Ed. So
Yeah, I think a couple of times, Rio and Sao Paulo,
Oh, wow.
live meetings. Wow. We'll do it again. As a matter of fact, our broadcast, March 1 and Feb 1, had representation from Brazil.
yeah, that's right.
And that was really cool. Okay, Michael, let's talk about, well, first of all, you just saw audience, you just saw Brazil featured, and Michael is very involved now, living abroad is very involved now in servicing a huge organization, shipping people or getting ready to ship people into Afghanistan. So you can't have more disparity and more challenge than something like that. So congratulations to living abroad for this work after all these years and being the leader in this kind of endeavor. Let's talk about ROI, return on investment. So for years, this relates to a never land, sort of like a hall of mirrors, because
Yes.
companies say, ROI, we just want them to learn and be good with customers and learn new things and bring that knowledge and information back into the company so we could serve the customers better and we could learn more about what it takes to serve those customers better. So it's not as easy as that. It's many of our audience worldwide knows that, but I think you should clarify just to start the conversation, because we're going to do a deep dive for a few minutes. Why is it so difficult to measure ROI?
It's, and when I got in the industry in 1995, and then that's pretty much when I met you right around that time. This has been a subject, right? And this has been a subject that mostly people threw up their hands and said, it can't be done because how do you measure, the cultural transfer and or, that this person now is a better manager coming back and staying for a couple of years. How do you measure that? And everybody had trouble defining it and things like that. So about 5 years ago, this subject has never left me. I just kept wrestling with how is it done. About 5 years ago, it was actually one of your conferences in Seattle. It came up as a subject. and I was talking to another person that was there, and we ended up going out for drinks later, and talked about this and thought maybe there was a way to solve this problem. And ended up getting a team of people together, some of the eminent folks like Bill Sheridan, who's now, retired. And we met in his office, and we brought people in from different parts of the world to actually have a multi-day meeting on this subject, to get to the bottom of it, and actually made a lot of breakthrough in like 2016 and 2017. Unfortunately, my wife passed away in 2017, as you know, and I kind of got sidetracked to take care of the family during that time. So this project of mine got put on the back burner. In late 2019, I decided to dust it off and take a fresh look at it, and ended up talking to Jennifer Green, who's out there who I met at one of your conferences, Ed. So
in San Francisco, yeah.
In San Francisco, right. And she was very interested in quantifying some of these less than quantifiable attributes of an assignment. And what we discovered in our conversation last January and February was that if you look at some of these, I call them squishy things like culture transfer or other things, and think of them all as productivity, you can start doing something with it. Productivity just means you're going to do things better, faster, and cheaper, right? Or you're going to make more money. So let's start defining what's better, faster, cheaper mean, or what does more money mean, and what's the net, the incremental profit of that? What does it mean to you? And let's plug it into a formula, and then we can start talking about. And the formula works kind of two ways. It not only maybe sets your expectations of what you need to do, but you can also kind of reverse engineer it a little bit and decide what minimum type of activity justifies this assignment. It could be that an assignment, we've never had an assignment canceled because of a poor ROI, because we don't know the ROI. But what we've had is, right now, all we look is at costs, because that's all we can look at. So we have this big giant bill for an international assignment, a couple $1 million, average. And CFOs and others look at it and go, do we really need to do this? This is a lot of money, but they don't look at the other side of the equation. What are you getting out of it? Because it's not quantifiable. So that is the kind of the secret, breakthrough, was really just finding these specific items that were difficult to define, and realize there's other people out there in the world that are putting numbers around productivity improvements and things like that. So let's bring that back into mobility and say, these are productivity improvements. Let's take a stab at measuring them and seeing if these assignments make sense. They should. What's happened, Ed, because costs are so big, we have shorter assignments. We have assignments. I got to take my notes out here just to make sure I say the words right, but we have more lump sums, right? We have, Exxon and Citibank doing lump sums on international assignments. That seems almost crazy to me, but they are. Business trips, have replaced assignments, extended business trips, single status, long-term assignments of 12 months. I remember when they were 4 years, you know what I mean? And of course, that's resulted in fewer assignments, because no one in HR can justify the assignment when CFOs come in or C-suite people say these are too expensive, because we, again, not talking the other side of the equation. So this ROI tool builds out that other side of the equation and starts putting numbers together.
So let me jump in and ask a question about technology. An app or some kind of any kind of technology that for communication purposes from home office out to the field on a regular basis, that would seem to want to facilitate communications for sure, but also productivity. What do you think?
Okay, so there's a couple of pieces to that equation. One is that having somebody doing regular communication is a cost, right? That is absolutely going to be a cost of their time. It's not free. So that would be a piece of it. And then you look at the other side does that person a better employee? Is that person bring better results does that person have a better return to the host country, the home country, and goes on. And those different pieces you can start breaking apart and putting it in along with the extra cost of doing that. And it begs the question: is the cost worth it? Right now we're saying it seems like it makes sense, but it may or may not. And that's what I say. It may or may not make sense. All these things we've been doing. It forces us to question all those things we're doing and see if they do make sense financially.
So you are what I'll call a brainiac in a nice way. Really, you got an MBA and you understand, you studied and you still understand quantum physics or quantum computing and all that. And I am, I couldn't even read tech for dummies, so so Paul, can you put up the slide that shows that algorithm, and we'll do a voiceover, and Michael, take us through what the process could be and then what the issues are connected with what you lay out mathematically. Okay, great. Okay, Michael, tell us about this guy. Who is this guy, Expat Moose?
Well, I think we're going to talk more about him later, but
okay, I can wait.
In this case, this has never happened in the real world. That the assignment was canceled because of a poor ROI. Because one, we can't measure the ROI, so that's not why they canceled. But in this future world or this cartoon world, it does happen. And I like to think that this could happen in real world in a couple of years, that we can have these kinds of discussions, maybe not to cancel them, but make them the best proceed the best way possible. That would be the ideal here. This isn't to, kill assignments. This is to make them better, make them more effective, make them more justified. We could double assignments if we find out they do magic, which we in the business think they do for people, but we have no way of proving it right now. So poor Xavier is not going on this assignment because it doesn't make sense, and we'll find those things too. So what we've identified are 9 variables that go into the formula for assignments. The first one, of course, is cost. Now that's the one we know. But Ed, when I came in this industry, back in the late 90s, understanding assignment costs were not something that HR really knew, as you recall.
And whose budget would it come out of, right?
Right, exactly. Now people like Air Inc. and Mercer and others get, they're out there and they're getting all that, and RMCs are gathering all this material and information for HR too. So we do understand costs. So that's like a given. The other pieces, such as the impact on the operating budget or the gross profit on, the profit on increased sales, and other things that affect the assignment, how much impact they have on the results. A high-level person would have a lot of impact, a low-level person less so. The risk associated with it. Think about it, Ed. It's riskier to send someone overseas than to send someone from Chicago to California, right? It's a lot riskier. So, the chance of it failing is greater. You're going to have to plug those numbers in too. And then, as I talked about turning squishy things into productivity, that's number 8. And that's what, and all these things are related to each other, so they can plug into an algorithm. Right now it lives in a pretty sophisticated spreadsheet. We're in the process of putting it online. So if nothing else, we can go in and plug in, do what if scenarios with this system.
Let me ask a couple of questions. And again, in terms of technology, I'm in the 8th grade. It's just so say 9 variables. Let's just assume that, and they're listed. Now, how does assignment cost, number one? So would that be A? What do you think?
Oh, well, I'll tell you that is A. The big N is number 4. So they're not exactly, the reason they're put this way is so you can't figure it out.
Well,
But-
anyway, that's why I'm in
Yes.
the 8th grade.
Right. No, don't you, no, I was presenting this about an hour ago with a prospective client who was trying to figure it out. So, exactly as you were. But they're all related. This is more complicated than, Einstein's E equals MC squared, a lot more complicated. So, but not terribly, but this is where it ends. It's not that complicated.
So you can quantify, you can plug in some numbers just to make an assumption because
Correct.
you have to start somewhere.
You got to start somewhere, right? And they are assumptions. Yeah. So
Yeah.
to some extent.
So let's just talk about a couple of things here of the assignees and the group insurance program that the company has. Number one, about risk management to the company, but then the employee and family have their own insurance policies, and so the financial risk could be quantified, assuming nothing happens. The financial cost of that is the amount of money to pay for the insurance, I guess. And then
Right.
if something bad happens, it's covered.
Right, but that's probably not related to this so much, Ed, because
Okay.
that would be in the cost factor. But what you did bring up, the risk factor, there could be a new product by an insurance company to ensure assignment success because they are high risk. So the companies could pay a dollar amount, and if the assignment fails, then they get reimbursed. I'm not sure.
It's really interesting.
But I'm not going to sell it. But that's how that.
Yeah,
would,
right.
That's how that would play out. If you
So
wanted.
it's really interesting. Just the other day, I was reading this article. I guess I don't know whether it was Harvard Business Review or a McKinsey report, but some genius was going on and on about pandemic risk insurance. As a company, you have business continuity insurance or loss of business, and they pay sky high premiums for that kind of thing. Never mind kidnap and ransom.
Right.
All right. So how do you? No, but the article went on to say that hardly anybody ever bought a rider called pandemic protection. In other words, loss of business specifically caused by disease, by a pandemic, which is sort of like a black swan.
Yes.
Wholly unthinkable. Never would happen, but there it is. It's happening.
Well, I don't know if there'd be any insurance companies that would have sold it, because if it did happen, it would be so costly. Anyway.
Interesting, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
You got the
think about it.
stage here.
Yeah, but think about that there is, you unpack some of these variables, there's things that live below them too that raise very interesting questions.
So assignment duration, the longer an assignment goes on, theoretically, the better the assignee performs.
Right, because look what also reduces year after year: risk. It's riskier in year 1 than in year 3, because they've been there a few years. It's not likely they're going to fail. Right. So that risk changes over the years. So that's why the duration, impacts. So they're more successful in year 2 or 3 than in year 1. There's probably a better ROI in those years,
Yeah. So, and if there's a family involved on assignment, spouse or partner can't work, or in the past anyways, couldn't work, um, that would cause strife. If mama ain't happy, no one's going to be happy. So that's going to drive up risk of assignment failure.
Uh, it's going to drive up risk, and it's probably going to drive down productivity because they're not getting in and doing the job that they were hired to do because they're dealing with a family situation at home, right? So it can be measured in those two. Risk of failure is higher and productivity is lower.
So I once read that uh, there's a company in Japan, and a major employer who I'm not going to name. They won't allow an international assignee to go on assignment until they can absolutely pass a test proving they can converse in the language and they could behave culturally sensitively. In other
Mm-hmm.
words, not representing poorly the organization while being on assignment. That is a whole other kind of risk reduction, but it also drives up the cost tremendously.
Right. So it drives up the cost, reduces the risk, and probably improves the productivity because they're more effective faster because they've done all this preparation. Right. It's almost like getting culturally trained or language trained before you go on assignment. You're not going to have to spend 2 months doing all that stuff, So it definitely falls into those categories: risk reduction, productivity, improvement.
Michael, number 5, discount rate. What does that mean?
That is the interest rate you have kind of out there in the world that you have to be better. It's also discounts money each year, so it's not a big part of it. It's just a necessary part. It only affects a couple percent.
Just to identify it.
Yeah.
And what about currency fluctuations?
Those are not in here. That would be a risk component to a degree, but I didn't cover. We did not cover these. This algorithm works for domestic assignments too,
Oh,
exactly
okay.
as written. So it just the cost numbers will not be as high, but everything
Yeah, interesting, isn't
stays
it?
the same.
Wow. Okay, well, this is really interesting. Um, so a company like as the one that is gearing up to send a lot of people to Afghanistan in a non-combat situation, that it's frankly amazing that that's going on, and mm, to the point here, how are they managing that risk? I mean, how are they managing those costs? And how are they managing that risk? Have they shared that with you?
No, they have not. They're one of the ways they're managing it is, they're working with us on getting the information to people before they go.
Uh-huh.
So what they expect. That's a risk reduction piece,
Yeah, that's a good idea.
So as I said, there's a lot in here once you get in here. And I'm hoping to do with this, Ed, is I don't know if this is a monetizable service. We're looking at working with Jennifer Green on consulting in this space. But I really want this to be a point of discussion in our industry so that when we talk about ROI, we are talking about something that we can do. We can do. Now, it's going to be different for everybody and everything like that, but we can do it. There's a way of handling it. It gets it mostly right.
So the assignee cost, I guess it's the salary, right? Because it's got to come out of somebody's budget.
Or incremental salary, depending if it's in the same budget. That's
Got
what
it.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. And then the assignment costs, if there's kids involved,
Yep.
then the
Schools,
company's going to pay for schools somehow.
school, bigger houses, whatever. Bigger apartments, more expensive.
Are companies telling people not to ship household goods, that just go and get a rental?
To a degree, obviously, if it's a short-term assignment, you're not going to move all your stuff.
Right.
So, and that's, if you're sending some for 8 weeks, they're not. So temp housing is a big expense in this whole, where we are today. And this algorithm will give people, they can look at, is it worth sending someone on an 8-week assignment and then 6 business trips, or sending them for a year? Period. And not doing all that stuff. I don't know. I mean, you can probably, look at the costs and look at the benefits associated, to the company, and see what makes the most sense.
So a company would send people, let's just get out of Afghanistan here and talk about.
That's a difficult.
Yeah. So, I mean, let's talk about Mexico City or Geneva, all right, as relatively speaking, easy places. And so for an American company. In Geneva, 99% of the people speak English, okay, and it's a language of business. Not everybody, but a lot. And in Mexico City, not so much, but at the higher levels within business, in the business centers, it's very common. But it would be helpful culturally to be able to speak French in Geneva and speak Spanish and fit in, rather than be an outcast. Oh, I shouldn't say that. Not fit in, and therefore not involved, and therefore, okay, people will welcome you into the diversity, but they're not going to include you because there's no communications. So language training and cultural training, it's not a soft expense. I mean, it's hard dollars.
Correct. I mean, we've done, I call mini ROIs on those types of things, but those all relate to productivity. How quickly you're going to get, on the job in the new place. And that, if you're culturally trained and language trained, you're going to do it faster. And, now how much faster, and is it worth the cost of keeping you from going and spending all this time and money up front? You can plug those numbers in and decide,
I've really enjoyed this conversation, and I want to make sure that you're comfortable with the information that's been displayed and exchanged here before we move on to another segment. So do you want to summarize about how in your experience, without naming names, you talk with a lot of C-suite people and a lot of very senior people in very large organizations. How do they view the cost issue as something that's, they got to get their arms around it, or don't worry about, we got to get this person over there?
Well, it's in the pandemic, of course, that, nothing's happened. As we come out, I'm seeing that costs are going to be, they were already starting to become a big problem. And I think they're going to become even more of a big problem.
I agree. Yeah.
As we open things up, we're going to have to look more carefully at who, and we're going to have, health related relocation policies and, and all that stuff that's affected by the pandemic. But I don't see us going, I think HR is going to need to justify these assignments in a much better manner. And this tool gives them the language to go to finance and say, this is what we expect out of this assignment. Yes, there are assumptions in there. There are things that are hard to measure in there, but they're better than saying we can't measure them at all. A lot better. And that's what we want to give our customers, our global mobility customers, the ability to do that.
So,
because we've lost the battle, the cost battle, we've lost it, and that's why the assignments are a mess, that are out there.
So we don't want to beat a dead horse here with this, but people are rusty. People in the industry are rusty because, in the past, there's been companies got this assignment, and service provider ABC have been employed,
Yep, yep.
and nothing's been going on really for too long. And so the needs of the best customers have changed as a result of the pandemic. And companies and service providers have to be tuned into that, because it's not like before. But on the same hand, the service providers, no matter who they are, they're itching to get back into action and show that they can do the job, and maybe even better, maybe
Mhm.
even more effectively than before. And so there's going to be a learning curve as business opens up, uh, and at the same time a push to get things done. So with that in mind, how are you counseling the business managers that you deal with, the business leaders that you deal with, about planning? How living abroad can do this and make available that, and make a connection here and there to facilitate things, and make life as easy as possible. So how do you inject humor and an attitude into this? And I know you created some time ago a cartoon. Michael, you're just a really talented guy, so I'd like people to know exactly what that means. And if you could bring up, Paul, the expat moose cartoons, and Michael, take us through this and how it all.
So what you're actually looking at is, kind of the creative process. When I come up with a cartoon, I draw a rough draft like this. I got to have the picture in it because that's how I think, and I throw some words down. And then if you go to the next slide.
Is this guy like an alter ego to you?
I've had this type of character in my, around since I was in high school. It wasn't expat moose, he was somebody else. But in 2004, I was, thinking, what could we do with to do something innovative, to bring some fun to this industry. And so I renamed him Xavier Patrick Moose, or Expat Moose. And soon after we developed the Moose Passport, as you know, you were involved in the very first one, as just a fun thing to do at ERC and later FEM. And
but
okay.
So the expat moose story is sort of a, not necessarily alter ego, but it's kind of a reduce the pressure kind of a thing, because
well,
it's cute and it's very creative.
Yeah, he basically travels around the world, and he's got a wife, Martha Stewart Moose, and he's got a daughter, Mooseling, and basically the women kind of save him from a lot of his potential faux pas around the world, or they get him out of jail for having improper papers, and so he, and it's just the stuff that can happen when you're traveling and living overseas. And he's got a life of his own now, because the Moose Passport, and was always a hugely popular thing right through the end of 2019, and we would give away $1,500, and there was all these scores and scores of people who won that money, so it was just pure fun. And
a networking device. Yes.
Right. And now the ERC copied us and FEM copied us, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Right. It was a way for people to come to the booth and get, meet our customers and get leads and work with our, friends in the industry. And that was really about it. And last fall during the pandemic, I decided to do a weekly cartoon, and we post it on LinkedIn and send it around in our newsletters.
Okay, Michael Cadden is multi-talented, as you know by now, and in his spare time, he has developed a series of children's books. And Michael, talk about that passion of yours, and we have some examples here. So take us through this.
Although this was something I started several years ago, it took, I did a lot of this type of effort within during the pandemic, including reworking this book 5 times and redrawing it 3 times just in the last year, because this one probably has potential to be published. And so, you know, I can draw and I can tell stories. So, and, you know, with the Moose cartoons and everything. And one of the you know, I was first published in 1969, Ed, with a cartoon in the local paper, you know.
I
And
didn't know.
yeah, I mean, I've been doing this forever, and basically my forte is to draw pictures that tell stories. So, you know, single frame Moose cartoons, editorial cartoons I did in the 80s. These picture books are not a whole lot different. They're a picture and a few words around it. You know, this picture book has 267 words, you know.
So,
It's more poetry than anything. So
is this Rhode Island based?
no, what this is my father.
Yeah.
That used to tell the stories.
Yeah.
He died 5 years ago, 7 years ago.
And what's the age bracket that you're aiming to say?
4 to 8, 4 to 9. Pre-readers and early readers, and you know, older sisters to read to the younger kids. So.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, you know, this is just a talent I have, and, you know, I had the time, and as I said, I redrew this book several times in the last year, and I think it's in its finished form. So I'll let you know how it does out there.
Oh, I think it's charming.
With a lesson that we must all learn to wake the birds for ourselves in our own lives.
Amen.
Yeah, there's a lot you can read into this story, you know, and that's what's the beauty of it. And the pictures, they help tell the story, you know. So thank you for bringing that up. I think, you know, in our industry, we have a lot of interesting people, and I think every one of us has some kind of, you know, backstory that just, you know, enhances their own existence and their own lives and makes them more interesting. So glad you brought that up for me.
You bet.
The birds wake up the sun.
I wake up
Melia,
a bird.
can you say tweet tweet?
Tweet.
Oh, wow.
So where do we go from here, Michael Cadden? Where is living abroad going in 21? Lucky 21.
Well, you saw the videos, so that's one thing we're doing. We've got about 15 of them. We're going to at least get up to our top 30. It's a pretty big project, but they're getting good reviews. They're really made for the newer generation that would rather have a video. It doesn't replace our content, but it gives them something to start with and get them interested in reaching into our content. In our industry, as you know, Ed, I saw it at the ERC, not the ERC meeting, but with Lynn and Andrew Walker the other day. They were talking about the rapid digitization of mobility. We've been behind the times. We are uniquely positioned to be a piece of that equation. We are not that equation, but we have stuff that goes into all these platforms. And, you know, you can't look too far before you find another platform, you know, and virtual DSPs, and they're talking to us. They need our information, you know, because that is going to a degree virtually, you know. So that we're in a really good place through API and the ability to, you know, funnel our information into various platforms.
API is an interchange of info. Is that it?
Right. Where they pull the information, the updated information on a weekly basis from our server. and they format it to fit in with their content on their site.
So
we
is
have-
that a robot doing that?
Well, it's a program, so not really
Yeah.
a robot, but so we're set up to do that. So we're in a good place for that. We know cross-cultural training is, live cross-cultural training may never come back. So we have a virtual cultural training product, the Culture Coach Online. We're starting to now get some really solid interest in that, because that world has probably moved on too, So we're in a good place for the 2022, 2023 world, that we see happening as a result of things speeding up because of the pandemic.
Right. There's definitely an acceleration in our side also. Just the other day on March 1, we had a global telecon that went a little over 2 hours, and we had there were 20 participants from 11 countries, and it was thankfully well done and well received, and it's gotten gotten a lot of good comments. So the world is shrinking. Our industry is a facilitator of that. We're not on the fringe. We're right in the heart, the core
Right.
of global talent. Global talent management envelops the mobility function.
Absolutely. And I think we want to be there with our clients, and we want to help them do their jobs better and, decrease the stresses in their life at the same time. So that's our mission.
Well, thank you for being my very special guest. I invite you to come back, and we could do more later. But people can reach you at livingabroad.com, right?
Yep. I'm on the website. Easy to find.
Okay, great. Have a good one.
Okay,
nice
thank you, Ed.
Be well.
Bye now.
Thank you for joining us in the meeting room at Global TV Talk Show.
Have a wonderful day, and stay safe.